That blaster's on full.
What's up guys, Gripe here with another review. Today we're going to check out the new Ultron figure from Revoltech, and this is part of the movie Revo line. It's the second figure in that line. It's made by Kaiyodo. And this figure is of the Ultron Prime from the Avengers Age of Ultron movie. To the left of the big window you have a close-up of the figure itself. Above that you have the movie Revo line logo. Underneath the picture of the figure you have the name of the figure, which is Ultron. And you see the Avengers Age of Ultron logo and the Marvel logo in the bottom right corner. And again, you have a big window there in the middle, and you can see the figure and the accessories. And behind that, there's a pretty interesting graphical insert, which I'll give you a close-up picture of a little bit later. And on this side of the box, we have another picture of the figure itself, and we also have the movie Revo and Revoltech and Avengers Age of Ultron logos. And on the back here, we have some close-ups of different areas of the figure. You have the head, the back, you also have some different poses of the figure, and some details about the figure and the accessories. The one picture there of the forearm is actually telling you that that part of the joint is in the forearm, so you can't remove it. And on this side, you have another picture of the figure in a different pose with the same logos. And on the top, you have the same logos and a little bit of the wraparound window there. And on the bottom here, you've got some more information just about the Revoltech joints. And now I'll just take a quick look at the insert that was in the box here. And it's just a bunch of different Ultrons. And this is the comic book Ultron. And they're all fighting. I just thought that was pretty cool. Now look at the accessories. And here's all the accessories laid out together. And one of the things I'd like to show you is how the stand goes together. Because it is a little bit different. You can see there's a smooth edge and a rippled edge on here. You want to make sure the smooth edge goes in the base and the contoured end goes in the actual claw here. Otherwise it will not stay in the stand and the claw doesn't fit completely on. And we'll just take another quick look at the stand here. The only unique thing about this is on the claw end it has these two kind of stabilizing areas there, which is a nice addition. And this is to move the eyes around inside the head. There are instructions in the box for it. This figure comes with two sets of hands. You have these fists, and you can see these are pretty nicely detailed. There's really no paint applied to it aside from that silver, but there is a nice detailed sculpt on it. And you also have these claw-like hands, and I really like the way these are positioned. Looks very menacing, and I think these also came out really good. And you also get the effect here, and this is kind of like a blaster effect. And it's just a translucent orange plastic, and it does have little finger holes here, and I'll show you how those go in. It only goes on one hand, unfortunately, but it does fit in pretty snugly once you get in. It's really just the thumb and the two middle fingers that go into it. So now I'll take a look at the Sculpt Paint on the figure itself, and this figure was sculpted by Yamaguchi Katsuhisa, and it actually is a really nicely sculpted Ultron. I actually like the overall sculpt and proportions of it better than the Figuarts. I think it's got a more muscular build, which looks a little bit more like the movie. It's definitely apparent that there was a lot of attention paid to the sculpt, and there's a lot of details on here. There's a lot of nice little cutouts. You have all these great lines. The head itself looks really good. The eyes came out really, really good. You've got these nice little inserts here in the cheek, just like in the movie. You can see the back is really nicely done. Even the back of the head here has some great details. The neck looks really good. And all these little red paint details came out really good on the figure. There's not a whole lot of paint, but what is on here is done very nice. It's not quite as precise as you would see on a Figuarts, but it's definitely much better than some of the other Revoltechs I've seen. I really like the abdomen section here with the big cutouts. It looks really, really nice. I like the side of the torso here. I like how it's different layers of details in there, kind of laying over on top of each other. It really helps to give this sculpt some depth, especially, again, in this torso and abdomen area. You can see there's additional details here when you move the diaphragm joint back, and again, that's really good. You also have some really nice details here on the arm. Again, it's a nice layered sculpt, and the red and black paint that is applied all looks really, really good. I also really like that they hid a lot of the joints here. Sometimes that's a problem with Revoltech, and they did a great job at hiding everything but the most obvious joints. And you can see the nice cutouts here in the stomach area. And these side pieces on the abdomen here are not structural, so they're a bit free floating in there. There's also some areas in the back that are like that. There's some nice details here on the butt. Those look really good. The hips look really good. I like that turbine look that they have, just like the movies. A lot of great details on the legs here. The black paint is nicely applied there. I also like these little bumps here on the back of the thigh. Those look really good. And there's also some really nice dimples here on the side of the calf. Those came out great. And again, the cutouts just give it great depth on the figure. Also some great cuts there on the shin. The feet look really good. You've got some nice treading here on the bottom. I guess you can call it treading, but there are some nice details on the bottom of the feet. One of the nice surprises with this figure was the heft. It's got a substantial weight to it, which you don't usually find with Revoltech figures. So now check out the articulation on the figure, and articulation is a little bit tough to review for Revoltechs on the video. I made that mistake with my first one, and then I really got the feel for the joint system that they use. It's not quite as user-friendly as, say, a Figuarts or pretty much any other action figure. You really have to disassemble the figure, play with the joint, get it in the right position, and then reassemble it. But I'll just kind of go over the areas of articulation with this figure. You can see you can get a really good look up with the head, and he looks down a pretty good amount. And the neck is also separately articulated, so you can get him looking at his toes if you want. You can also get some side to side on the neck there. In this area, the upper back here is a little bit more pliable, so that will allow you some additional range of motion. The shoulders use double jointed Revol joints, and that allows you to get some really nice poses out of it. And one end of those joints is attached to the arm, and the other end is attached to the upper torso area. And that allows you to get some really good range of motion. You can kind of lift the whole arm up to get a good clearance, and you can really get some good poses with that. And these are the free-floating back pieces. Those are actually attached to the shoulder joints. So once you pop the arm off to adjust that joint, those can also come off, and you can adjust those as well. This figure uses a large Revol joint for the diaphragm joint. You can get some really good movement out of that forward, backwards, as well as once you take the top of the torso off, you can get different side angles on that as well. One thing to be wary of is these free-floating pieces will pop out on top of the pelvic area, so you just have to push those back into their socket. The elbows use a single Revol joint, and you do get a really good range of motion on that. One thing to beware is the bottom here in the forearm. That is actually in there. You cannot remove the forearm from that joint. If you try to, you will break the joint. And that's noted on the box as well as in a little pamphlet inside. But you can get a really good range of motion on this. As you can see, you can get a good bend on there. You can get it in a lot of different angles. Again, you just have to kind of pop it out from the bicep area and then adjust it as needed. And it has a small Revoltech joint there for the wrist, and you can get good movement on that as well. This figure uses another large Revoltech joint for the hips, and those are by default kind of at a 45-degree angle, so you can only get so much movement out of them. It's also due to the sculpt on the hip there. You can see it's a little difficult to move those. You really do have to take the leg off and move them as needed, and then put the leg back on. It's just a much easier way to work with the legs. But once you do that, you can get some good poses out of them and a lot of range of motion. Again, it's just not the most user-friendly way to do it, but you really do get a huge range of motion out of all these joints. The knees are a large single-jointed Revol joint, and you can see you have really good bend on those as is. They do go straight. You can also rotate, just like all the joints, you can rotate pretty much on both ends on most of them. Feet have a smaller Revoltech joint. You can really get that foot pretty far down. Goes up a decent amount, and just like all the other joints, you can rotate that. And you do have a good amount of ankle pivot on this. As you can see, you could probably go about 15 degrees in either direction. Toes are articulated. You can get those up, and you can actually get those a little bit down as well, which is nice. And again, it's tough to really show you the full amount of articulation on a Revoltech figure, but I can just give you a basic idea. And once you get the figure in hand, you'll understand. So now I'll take a look at the size and scale of the figure, and the Ultron stands at 6 3/4 inches tall, which is actually probably a little bit on the small side considering Ultron is supposed to be 8 feet tall in the movie. And while Revoltech has not made any other figures from the Age of Ultron movie, I do have the Iron Man Mark 21, which you see here, so you can get an idea of how they scale together. And again, the Ultron really should be a little bit bigger. And just for some additional comparison, here he is next to the Figuarts Mark 45, which is from Age of Ultron, that's on the right, and the Marvel Legends Mark 43 on the left. And again, you can see he is a little bit small for how big he should be. So overall, this is a really awesome Ultron figure. It's probably the best one out that isn't a Hot Toys. It's also one of the best Revoltechs that I have, although I don't have that many. They really did a great job of hiding a lot of those ugly Revoltech joints in this figure. The only issues I had with this figure were the scale. It's a little bit on the small size, and it is a little light on accessories, but other than that, it's a great figure with amazing articulation that you can really get into some awesome poses with. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. Subscribe for more.
Set blasters on full.